Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful idea from meditation that honestly gets to the very root of why we struggle. It's all about this hidden mental lens, this view that shapes every single moment of our lives. And most of the time, we don't even know it's there.
You know how it is, right? You try to meditate or just quiet your mind, looking for a little bit of calm, and instead you end up in this total battle, a fight against your own thoughts, your feelings. So why is that? Why does trying to find peace so often feel like an uphill battle?
Well, here's the big insight. The problem isn't the anxiety or the sadness or the confusion itself. The real issue is the invisible lens we're looking through. The reason any experience makes us suffer is because there's a specific, unnoticed view attached to it. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack. Okay, so how do we begin to even notice this hidden view? Well, the key is to understand that we are almost always operating through one of two fundamental lenses, two totally different ways of seeing our entire world. First up, you've got the default view. You can think of this as our factory setting, our automatic pilot. It's just built from a lifetime of habits and ideas, and its main job? To personalize everything. So when sadness shows up, this view doesn't just register sadness. It jumps to the conclusion, I am sad. It literally glues our identity to a temporary feeling. And living through this lens? Whoa, it has some major consequences. It's what creates that constant inner conflict, that feeling of struggle, because it's always fighting with reality. It builds this solid fake me out of things that are constantly changing, and it keeps us stuck on that hamster wheel, chasing pleasure and running away from pain. But, and this is the good part, there's an alternative. It's called the cultivated view. This one isn't automatic, it's a skill, something we develop through mindful observation. Its whole purpose is to correct the crazy distortions of that default lens by helping us see our experiences not as personal problems, but as natural, impersonal processes.
And this contrast right here is everything. The default view is automatic, conditioned. Its core idea is, I am this feeling, which just locks us into suffering. But the cultivated view is intentional. Its perspective is, this experience is happening. And that simple shift opens the door to wisdom and, you guessed it, peace.
So the crucial question, the one you're probably asking, is how do we actually do this? How do we make the shift? Well, it turns out it comes down to making three fundamental changes in how we see things.
These are pretty much the steps on the path to clarity. We're going to explore how we move from seeing everything as personal to seeing it as natural, from identifying as a doer to just witnessing a process, and finally, from being an experiencer to just seeing experience itself.
All right, let's start with that first shift. The old default view takes everything personally. A tough emotion feels like it's happening to me. The new view completely reframes this. It helps us see that these experiences are universal. They happen because of causes and conditions, kind of like weather patterns. They're not personal. And this quote just nails it. Our experiences aren't personal rewards or punishments. They're not for you or against you. They are simply impersonal events, just unfolding according to their own nature. They're just doing their thing.
Okay, the second shift. This one challenges the idea that there's a little CEO sitting inside our heads. We feel like there's a knower who knows things, or a thinker who thinks thoughts. But the cultivated view shows us that knowing is just a process. Hearing is a process. They happen all by themselves without needing a little person in there pulling the levers.
The idea of a separate knower is called a redundant view, and that is the perfect word for it. It's an extra idea we tack on top of a process that's already complete, on its own. Knowing is already happening. Adding a knower is totally unnecessary. And now for the third, and maybe the most mind-bending, shift. We have this really deep feeling of being a solid experiencer, a stable self that stands apart from our experiences. The new view flips this completely on its head. It helps us realize that the feeling of being a self is itself just another passing experience, like any other thought or sensation. And this is where it gets really profound, but stick with me. The experiencer that feels so real is actually just the experience of an experiencer. And this points to a logical impossibility. How can one experience have another experience? It can't. That's like saying a sound can see a color. It's impossible, and that reveals the whole illusion.
Okay, I know that last one can make your brain do a little bit of a backflip, so to help it all land, let's use a couple of fantastic analogies that really make this insight click.
So picture this, a little kid who is absolutely terrified of their own shadow. They run from it, they fight it, but they can never ever escape because they think it's some separate, scary monster. But the second they understand how light works, how shadows are made, poof, the fear is just gone.
Well, that sense of I is just like the shadow. It's not some monster we need to destroy. The goal is simply to understand what it is, to see its nature clearly. And once we see that it's just an appearance, it stops being this thing we're constantly struggling with and afraid of.
Here's another great one, the flip book. You know what I'm talking about, right? A stack of pages, and each page has a slightly different static drawing on it. But when you flip through them really fast, you don't see separate drawings, you see one continuous moving person.
And this is exactly what's happening in our minds. This super fast flow of thoughts, feelings, and sensations creates this convincing illusion of a solid experiencer. But if you slow it all down, if you look at each individual page, you realize there's no single solid person actually there.
So, bringing this all together, what's the actual point of this whole practice? It's not what most of us think when we start out. It's really about one thing, investing in wisdom.
See, the real goal of meditation isn't to collect a bunch of blissful experiences or to get rid of all the bad ones. That's just playing the old game of the default view. The real work is simply to invest in wisdom, to gently and consistently practice seeing reality through this new, much clearer lens.
And what happens when we do that? When the illusion of a solid, separate self is finally seen for what it is, we're not left with nothing. Not at all. What remains is this profound peace, a sense of quietness, a sense of presence prevailing. It's a peace that comes not from winning the fight, but from realizing there was never a fight to begin with.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. The central struggle that so many of us face is with this phantom self, this shadow in the mind. The question isn't, how do we get rid of it? The real question is, what happens when you stop fighting the shadow and simply turn on the light to understand it?